I'm Scott Allen Miller. It is the 3rd of January, 2023, and this is my vlog of daily life in Nicaragua. I am out in the garden today, and I'm going to do just a single combined episode today. We tried an experiment yesterday with splitting it, and I'm going to give a little bit of time for feedback on that because I do have to make these. But today is it's a short topic coming up, and it's a short daily update. And my daily update, kind of like on the first, is sort of a topic on its own. So the cool thing that happened today, first of all, it's Tuesday, we're into the work week, and we are just starting to get settled in, and there's so much work to catch up on that's really the focus and going to be all this week. Hopefully by next Monday we kind of back into the normal groove of things, and actually coming up next week, Paul has to do his border run, so I'm going to be taking one of those days and driving him to Costa Rica, and possibly coming back the same day. I'm not really sure how that's going to work. We're going to test some things. I'm trying to turn off my watch. No matter what I do, when I start doing this video, it is sure that I'm trying to get a message to the watch. I don't know what it is about making the video, the way that I carry my voice. My watch just activates and goes crazy. So with being here today, today's the first real day that we've been settled in and had time to start having our live-in chef make food, and I started the day with a veggie omelet, well, with cheese. So I'm not completely healthy, but pretty good. I'm trying to cut back on the carbs. I'm trying to get a lot more veggies, and I'm just gonna kind of give that an attempt. And having our own cook here who's able to make whatever I need makes that so much more possible. It was so hard when we were living in the old house and didn't have someone cooking, because I have to work during the day and I'm very busy, and that's true for a lot of people. A lot of you who are looking at moving to Nicaragua or doing something, you're gonna be like, well, I've got lots of free time, cooking at home is no problem, and that's normal, so that's fine. But some of you may be looking at being digital nomads, you may be looking to work here, or you may just want the luxury of having someone to cook for you. And one of the big advantages to that, other than it probably will actually save you money or be at least break even, is that you have some potential to get more healthy. And if you're someone like me, one of the biggest challenges I have with eating healthy is time. I have absolutely no time to come out and make myself healthy food. And so I'm always grabbing a bag of chips, or I will eat a yogurt or something, but it's always prepared food that's ready to go at that particular moment. And I have seconds, right? It's I got off one meeting, I'm getting on to the next. So I run into the house and just have to grab whatever's available in the fridge. And invariably that is going to be junk food, because junk food is what is at the ready, right? And so I'm drinking hot coffee all day because it's prepared. I can just pour it and go. And I try to put a bottle of water in the freezer and swap them out, so I always have cold water. But that takes a lot of work, and my bottles are always disappearing, and so it's not as good a process as it seems. And and there's no way to cook food, right? Even just making a sandwich is often a problem because it takes time. I got to pull things out. I will get interrupted in the middle. Then I'll have to put it all away and not finish my food. And then it'll be, why didn't you clean up the kitchen? And it'll be like, well, because 3 hours ago I got interrupted and I haven't left a meeting since then. I have no way to get back to the kitchen to clean. It's frustrating when you're busy and working like I am. And so having someone who can cook for you. And so at breakfast, I want a healthy omelet. No bread, no nothing, just make me a healthy omelet. Boom, I can go to work and it shows up. And it's so awesome. And for lunch, I'm like, you know what? I don't really need very much, but what I want is grilled veggies. I'm not gonna just eat raw veggies for lunch. I mean, I could if I was starving. I can't say I couldn't do it, but not something I'm very likely to do. But saying, oh, I'd like grilled vegetables for lunch and nothing else, no problem. Whole plate of grilled vegetables while I'm working, so it can be brought to me during a meeting. I don't have to schedule it in between things in most cases, because it just comes to my office, because my office is now in the house. My gosh, it has made life so much easier. So today is the first day of really leveraging that. And it was pretty fantastic. The downside is that today is also the first day that we ran out of food. We're already out of food. It's funny, when we were in Houston, the girls, Luciana and Clara, made a bunch of deviled eggs for everybody, and they went through 15 eggs really quickly. And it's how could you go through so many eggs so quickly? And we've been back for a couple days, and we've gone through something like 30 eggs. I don't know if it's quite that much. I think it is, though. I think 30 eggs just in the time we've been back, because every meal we're like, ooh, omelets, ooh, breakfast food. That's so, it's an easy thing to order. So we're gonna get more eggs soon for dinner tonight. We don't have any eggs or anything. So we're actually gonna have food brought from the beach tonight, but 2 meals for the day already taken care of. All right, so that's kind of a topic, just sort of life in Nicaragua with food. But now the official topic for the day, and someone did mention one of the very recent videos that I can potentially put a break into the video and tell YouTube that there's a new topic here, and I'm sure that's correct because I've seen other people do it. I've never done that. So today is meant to be an experiment to see if I can make that happen, and then I can get some feedback from you all as to whether that is better, worse, and to some degree I have to see that feedback from what you say, but also the feedback from how it affects the views. So we're gonna check that out and try to see. So today's topic is inner city living versus fringe city living, or the kind of the suburbs. So first of all, suburbs in Nicaragua are not like suburbs in the United States. In the United States, cities tend to have a very obvious core, there are certainly cities that don't, and then a very large ring of suburbs around them, and we all know what they look like, right? You get into the US suburbs and you know you're in the US suburbs. They are an entire ecosystem unto themselves. Here in Nicaragua, suburbs don't tend to be like that so much. The suburbs tend to be what we think of as a city in the United States. There doesn't tend to be so much of a giant urban core, but there's this kind of large urban general area. So here in León is a great example, but it's going to be mostly the same most of the cities. Managua gets a little bit different just because of the size. We have El Centro and the immediate barrios around it, La Barrio, Zaragoza, some like that I show you guys on a regular basis and have in the past. Those barrios, the ones normally called the barrios, are the center of the city. Now, El Centro is the actual city. That is downtown. El Centro means downtown in Spanish. But the barrios are the inner city neighborhoods that are connected to El Centro. You can generally, in a normal sized city like León, anything that touches El Centro will be a barrio, and generally anything that touches one of those will be a barrio. But once you're 2 barrios out, you may be turning into a reparta or something else, and that means you're transitioning into the suburban style living rather than the inner city style living. So when people are coming, when extranjeros, when foreigners are looking to move into Nicaragua, or probably anywhere, and you're looking for housing, you're looking at apartments, a couple things happen. One is we only know cities. You don't know small areas. Now, there's exceptions like San Juan del Sur, that's not a city, and everyone knows it. So that notwithstanding. But in general, if you're not looking there, I almost fell over. If you're looking out this way, you're going to say, I want to look in León. So you talk to anybody, right? Whether you're talking to someone like me and I'm just like, oh, some advice on places to live, or you're talking to a real estate agent or an agency of some sort, or just people you know, and you say, I want to live in León. They immediately think, and pretty much only think, of El Centro and the barrios around it. But they also generally think, foreigner, you don't want to be in the barrios. Partially just because the name has a negative connotation to a lot of English speakers, but also because they do tend to be poorer, they tend to be farther away, you tend to, be in a local neighborhood, and it's a little bit awkward for a foreigner, whereas the downtown areas are relatively expected to have foreigners in them. So quite often if you say, oh, I'd like to find a house, I'd like a 2-bedroom and blah, 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 everyone's going to gravitate to El Centro. To a lesser degree, they're going to be like, are you okay looking at the immediate barrios? Okay, and then maybe they'll look, but they're still looking in the inner city. To get people to really look beyond that, of course some do, and especially those who do it all the time know to do so, but the amount that people look out there is much less, and it doesn't necessarily come up on searches because it may not have the name associated with it. There's a lot less advertising. It's much harder to find information about it. So whether it's intentional, accidental, or simply the process of naming conventions, there's a really good chance that you're going to get the majority of your information from any source, whether it's your own research or someone else's, is going to be about the inner city. The suburban living, and of course there's country living and farm living and all that kind of stuff, where small villages, that's a different thing. We're not going to talk about that today. We're just talking about, so like León or a Matagalpa or a Rivas, you have the main city, and then you have the area around the city. Now, we lived in the immediate barrio to El Centro in La Barrio. That's where we've been living. We are now on the outskirts in Sutiaba. We are certainly in the suburban zone now, in a reparta. And so a couple things that change. And some of this is obvious, right? Of course, if you want to go into the middle of the city for services like restaurants, shopping, and so forth, it's farther away, but not very far away. I can still walk into the city. Fatima is another great example. You can walk into the city, but it's a farther walk. Still very easy to take a taxi, but you're no longer in those inner city taxi rates. The barrios get those cheap rates. The Rapartas get more expensive rates. So we're paying quite a lot more to take a taxi in now, and it's much harder to get one. They don't pass by every couple minutes, but there are still city buses or some kind of bus. So that's big, and that's an awfully large driver. However, there's a tendency, and this is really important to think about when you're looking at moving anywhere. When you're looking at moving, it doesn't matter if it's Miami or León, Nicaragua, or somewhere in Argentina or France, right? Typically from abroad, you're going to be like, I want to live in Paris, right? And Paris is cool, super cool. But when you actually get to France, a couple things will happen. One is you'll be like, oh, I didn't want to live in the tourist areas and all the spots, I fell over again, almost all the spots that I see online and hear about remotely. I want to live in some little arrondissement that's way out from the center because it's got a really cool culture, or it's cheap, or it just has these restaurants I like, whatever. Or you're gonna be like, I actually want to be out in the suburbs because I want a big house, but I want to come into Paris from time to time. Or maybe you'll be like, I really want to be in León, France, or some other city, Nice or whatever, because it's a different culture, and you're like, wow, actually that's what I like. I mean, Paris is cool, but it's not the thing of France that I really want. Oh, I need to reconsider where I am. Same thing's going to happen here. When you first come to Nicaragua, chances are you're going to want to be in the middle of things. You're still experimenting, you're finding your restaurants, you're finding your way around, and so you're going to gravitate towards the center because it's easy. It's how I heard León is good, so I'm going to stay in León. But once you start living anywhere for any amount of time, chances are you're going to want to start moving towards these dogs. They're just so. You're gonna start moving towards the suburbs or small villages or alternative cities because you're going to learn more about it, and you're going to discover how to deal with stuff. Like for us, using Ugo and Pedidos Ya allows for delivery of food so easily, and having a living cook makes it so much easier. So and we have our own car now, and now we have dogs, and they need to be able to run around and have lots of space. So there's a lot of factors that change after you start to get to know an area, and that is a really big potential deal in your long-term decision making. And that doesn't mean you don't want to start in the center and then look in the outer areas, but in many cases you actually would want to start outside the center, but may not know how to do so. So approaching it from that way, if you can, may be something that's beneficial to you. Here in Nicaragua, which is what we're really talking about, by the way, we have kind of an interesting sky going on. It is dark enough that our street lamp has turned on, and we have some dark clouds and some sunlight, and it's hard to tell if it's about to be a rainstorm or just a little bit of clouds and a sunny day. It's been going back and forth, and we can't tell what is going on. This jicama tree is all in flower now and really in bloom. Actually, let's get a better shot of this near one. Look how beautiful that is. Just great. I think I need to adjust the exposure on my camera. I think the GoPro is too dark by default, but on bright days I feel like it's perfect, and on dark days I feel like it's dark. So I'm not sure if it's just not auto adjusting correctly or something. I need to play with that in future episodes. So one of the things you have to understand about living out in the country or in the suburbs here in Nicaragua is that you have different costs of things, and a big one is the cost of utilities. So things like water. So out here we go to well water, so that gets really cheap. And electricity, as you move out from the city center, actually gets cheaper, not more expensive. So what you tend to find is that people are more likely to have air conditioning away from the city center, and they're also less likely to use it because you get more fresh air. We have more airflow. The city doesn't hold the heat because you're farther out. And but air conditioning is much cheaper. So when you live outside, you potentially drop a lot of those costs and are able to do things a little bit differently. The dogs just tripped over the sprinkler. We did discover, if you saw my videos from the last few days, that we had some sprinklers leaking in the yard. It wasn't actually leaking. It was the dogs had turned them on because they would run into the control mechanism and just turn it on a little bit. And so they're kind of idiots. But they just love this yard, and you can see how big this is. This is really a large amount of grass that they like to run around on, and then they can go way over to the side, and then they have a giant backyard back there as well. And now they're at my feet. I don't know what they're doing. I don't know. Okay, Clive is following me. I'm not sure why, and Mia's hanging out. So that can be a really big factor, that the cost of a lot of things goes down. And of course, the cost of housing goes way down. So what you're paying for in the center, and in a lot of cases when people are saying, well, what is the cost in Leon? And we're saying, well, you can get a 2-bedroom for, say, $300 that you'd really like. They then only look, and then not on purpose, right? They'll then ask someone to show them places. They'll only get shown right in El Centro. And yes, to some degree, they're being shown things that are inflated prices. That's often the case. But they're also being shown very explicitly super expensive locations that may not be at all what they're intending. And then if you, so this is something that I've had come up quite often through multiple processes, so it's not one person doing it or anything, is that we can give some really good prices. I know, so for a 3-bedroom, if you want a very nice 3-bedroom here in Leon, and you're not looking for something really specific to a location, generally $350 to $400 a month is kind of the price range. Of course, there's exceptions. Of course, there's some places you could come up with, they'll be sub $200. Of course, you can come up with some place they'll be more than $800. But by and large, $350 to $400 is a really healthy range for that. $300 to $450 is really kind of the broad range for that. Things that foreigners would be likely to be interested in, right? If you need to be on a tight budget beyond that, very doable. And that's Leon, right? If you want to go to like a Matagalpa, those prices come way down. But then pretty consistently what happens after I say that, and I can tell you lots of places you can go that have those prices and really beautiful spots. Like I'm talking safe, yard, great utilities, modern construction, just beautiful places. Then they'll do some research and go look at a few places, and they'll find old antique colonials in the dead center of town, and they'll be asking $1,000, and they'll be like, why is this $1,000? I thought this should be like $350. And it's like, well, okay, El Centro around the Basilica, there's a couple things. One, everybody who's doing gringo prices, that's where they are, because it's the only places where the gringo pricing will fly, right? People who want to be downtown and don't do any research, so if they're doing a Hail Mary of trying to get many times what a property is worth, that's where it's going to be. And also the prices in El Centro are much higher. And the old colonials downtown are more expensive, but foreigners tend not to like them. So you end up in this weird situation where you feel like you're getting a really awful house. You're not. It's a beautiful house, but it's a colonial in a style that you probably won't like. And with a lot of accommodations you probably won't like there's no accommodation for air conditioning, because remember, the power down there is expensive, and the house was built before there was air conditioning in almost every case. And the ventilation, while probably well for what it is, good for what it is still in the middle of the city, and there's a lot more heat and less air to work with. So even though it may be a very well-designed house, it has a lot of negatives that just have to come with it. So consider that. And then the location just could easily double the price, but it only accounts for 1% of the houses on the market. It's just the ones that are shown to foreigners, or the ones that foreigners find when doing researching, because they're basically searching in the center and looking out from there. But probably that's not what you want. Normal people in any city don't start in the dead center. They may want to be in the city, and when we say the suburbs here in Nicaragua, we're still meaning in the city, but it's slightly different than the US, but it's not the center. And it's not the center barrios, it's that farther out, and the prices go way, way, way down. The property sizes go way up. The modernity of the houses generally comes up. The construction quality, I don't know if the quality's better, but it's a different standard that tends to be something that foreigners like us are going to be much happier with. And that's all stuff. Now, this that I have here, this is a colonial style. This is not a modern style at all, but it's so well done and just a fantastic place. We love it. But very nearby, you get the modern stuff, right? It's blended in. The availability is there, and all of that. So it's often that trigger, that being shown or ending up looking at exclusively antique homes in extremely desirable or extremely searched for streets in a very small area, accounting for an incredibly tiny percentage of the market, tends to be what makes it seem like prices are going to be much high, not high, still a fraction of what they are in the US, but many times higher than what they should be based on the things that people say that they're looking for. Oh, I'm looking for a 2-bedroom. I don't care if it's downtown. Okay, then you probably don't want to look downtown, because that's going to double your price right off the bat. probably not double. Like if you really are shopping around and you want to be downtown, you can afford to be down there probably, right? But you're definitely going to pay $800 for what you would pay $350 for somewhere else, and you may not like it as much, and your electricity is going to be higher. So consider those things. And a lot of times in the outskirts, you get continuous water, but in the old downtown areas with the ancient piping, that's where you have issues with the water coming on and off because they don't have the mechanisms to keep it on all the time in some of the older cities, like Leon, a very, very old city. And a lot of negatives tend to come with being in El Centro, but a lot of positives come with it too. Really interesting architecture, walkable to absolutely everything, all the tourist sites, all the nightclubs, all that stuff is going to be concentrated right in the center. And you want to take taxis, it's going to be super cheap. You want to run into tourists, you want to have just that constant churn of activity. That's where you probably want to be. But for most people who are moving here for anything more than just, if you're just coming for 6 months, heck, that might be exactly what you want, and that's gonna be super cool. But if you're coming here to live, there's a really high chance that that isn't what you want. It's not what you want to be, where you want to be living while searching for a permanent home, and it isn't where you want to be when you finally find that permanent home, with rare exception. And so consider that that is a huge factor in the pricing, in the happiness, in the lifestyle that you may or may not be looking for when you're moving to Nicaragua or anywhere, right? But here in Nicaragua, those are the factors we know. In some places, like that power being cheaper in the suburbs is not a thing, but here it is. And worrying about the heat and cooling in the same way, again, may not be a big thing. And speaking of the heat, my GoPro 11 just overheated and died. So this is actually highlights something that I've been wondering, is just how important it is going to be to have multiple GoPros so that when one overheats or whatever, I'm able to switch to another. I do plan on doing some interesting stuff with having two in the near future, now that I'm finally getting caught up and have time and space and able to do things. I need to get different grips on each one, have them ready to go. So this is the GoPro 9 that I'm now on because I have multiple batteries and cameras and able to let the one cool down while this one does the recording. Yeah, so that's the first time I've had to do this, and this is the first time I've fired up the GoPro 9 in a month, pretty much, almost, not quite, but just about a month without it. And oh, it's nice to have you back, old friend. All right, so that is our topic for the day. You may want to seriously consider looking outside the center of the cities, and consider that when you're looking at pricing, when you're looking at things, and maybe you want to be in the center, don't discount that the center is super cool and you may want pricier stuff in the center. First of all, it's probably not as pricey as what you're seeing. If you feel like it's a price shock, wow, I thought this would be hundreds of dollars, not $1,000. Back up, it should not be $1,000 for anything normal, even in the dead center. And so consider that you may be getting gringo priced pretty heavily, depending on the approach you've taken. But also very much be aware that there's a good chance you don't want to be in the center, and that your prices that you're thinking, the lifestyle that you're thinking, the things that you're hoping for may not be accommodated by that, and you need to potentially look farther afield and have a different approach to what you're looking at. Thanks for joining me. Please remember to like and subscribe. Questions about housing and all that, let's get down there in the comments below. I'm going to talk about a house that we saw just the other day. I did not take video of it while we were there, but do have some interesting feedback on pricing and stuff outside of the city. We'll do that real soon, and hoping to get going on getting more videos of houses very, very soon. That'll mostly be on Central American living, but we'll show some here. But get down there and talk about what you're looking for, what you think prices should be, what you're hearing, what you're seeing, and all that down in the comments. And if you'd like to support the channel, of course, you can buy me a coffee. That comes directly to me, makes a huge difference for everything that we do. And thanks so much for joining me. Share on social media, tell your friends. Are you considering moving to Nicaragua, Central America, Latin America, just moving abroad? Where are you looking to go? Let's talk about it. I will see all of you tomorrow.